Thank you. You can hear me. So I'm Siew Kit from Singapore Cruise Center. So I am the CIO, CTO, as well as driving the digital transformation. Well, to start off with, this is what I'm going to cover today. It's all about how to use data, right? How to use data to basically drive better decision making to support operation on the ground. And today I want to cover three areas. The first area is augmented analytics is transforming business intelligence. And then the second area to cover some examples and sectors very close to our heart, right? For example, all of us travel, right? All of us fly, and hopefully some of you actually take ferry and cruise, right? So when you see how some of these use cases actually leverage the data to support decision making. And lastly, right? Everyone talk about benefits, but I think the challenges of adopting augmented analytics. Well, I've been driving digital transformation for quite some time. I was originally from Changi T5, right, until the COVID strike. And now I'm at Singapore Cruise Center, two different sectors altogether, one in air, one in sea. But we do encounter the same challenges when we try to transform the organization, right? So now, who are we, right? So I have been in the aviation industry for almost 30 years, and I'm a very baby in the maritime passenger space. When you talk about maritime space, everyone is associated with PSA, right? The world's #1 port in Singapore. They actually process cargo. For us, it's more passengers, right? So we are on the left-hand side, or rather, yeah, on the left-hand side. So that is the big cruise ship, right? We also operate at the harbourfront, Tanah Merah and Pasir Panjang, right? We operate 3 ferry terminals, and if you wish to go for a short holiday, please consider us to go to Batam, Bintam, and the Zaru, right? And also we manage, right? We are basically the second or even the father of cruise terminal operation, right? If you have gone on Spectrum of Sea or Dream, that is basically serviced at our competitor side, right? At Harbourfront, we also process or handle cruise ships of about mid to small size. Okay, so we handle about almost 7 to 8 million packs per annum, and the next 2 years we're going to undergo transformation at our terminals, and hopefully we can actually increase the capacity to almost about 10 million packs per annum. Right, this is an exciting time for us in the maritime space. Well, basically our counterpart is the aviation industry, right? Changi Airport is world #1 for many years, right? They just recaptured the title last year, and they manage almost 69 million packs per annum and 382,000 flights, right, per annum, just before COVID. So I think they're back, right, pre-COVID time. And with Terminal 5 in the pipeline, hopefully in 2036, we could see about 130 million packs per annum through Changi. Okay? So what's the similarity between us? Basically, fly cruise, fly ferry, right? So this is the segment, very interesting segment. You heard of Disney Cruise coming to Singapore. So how we wish we can welcome foreigners or passengers coming from India and China, linked through Changi Airport, and then we basically ferry them to the cruise ship, and off you go, you know, cruise to nowhere, right? So fly cruise and fly ferry is something that we want to focus on in the future. Now, this is Tanah Merah. You have not gone through Tanah Merah. This is Tanah Merah. We are going to undergo a renovation, right? We want to put in the new self-service check-in. We want to integrate very closely with our ICA next clearance concept, whereby basically you do not need to present your passport, just with a facial, you can actually breeze through immigration, right? So what happened is that COVID came and gone, but we suffered very badly, right? Airports, airlines, ferry, and so forth actually saw a significant drop in passenger throughput. So how do we use data during recovery? So this is more like using data to understand what's going on and also predict when exactly will recover. So for airlines and ferry operators, they use data to determine demand and plan the fleet accordingly. And this is a very good example of how Singapore Airlines managed to come back so strong after the COVID, because they use data, right, to really determine and manage the fleet, bringing back aircraft from the desert and making them airworthy even long before other airlines do, right? And how airports, ground handlers, and ferry terminal operators like us use data. We actually use a lot of data to do simulation, right? We need to simulate, roughly when you recover and roughly when I can basically do more, right? So again, using booking data and fleet assignment plan, we try to optimize resource utilization. Just information, Harbourfront was just only open last June, right? June 22. And it was basically quite a risk that we want to take, right? Basically, we want to reopen Harbourfront with traffic still low, right? And we want to capture the June holiday makers. And the ferry operators, a lot of the ferries were in their trees or in the yard and all the stuff. So to really reactivate the fleet, that easy. So together with the ecosystem, right, partners, MPA, us, our ferry operators, we worked together and we managed to reopen Harbourfront in June last year. And guess what? After 1 year, we basically have recovered up to probably 60–70% of pre-COVID. Still a long way to go, but I think the recovery process was taken very well, and we use a lot of the data to help us to basically move forward. And the interesting thing is that, every time we say we use historical data for trending, but actually, historical data doesn't apply here pre-COVID or post-COVID because of the revenge travel and also internal economics and social factors. For example, the Chinese tourists are still not back, right, because of probably some internal economic factors, or they want to travel near shore, or probably because the Singapore dollar is too strong. So those are basically some of the historical data that we can't use to actually predict forward, right? Now, how are we going to use data post-recovery? So during the recovery, of course, we try to predict forward what's going to happen. But post-recovery, now this is where the challenge is, right? So after recover from COVID, mindset change. A lot of the people, right, don't want to work in the airport environment because, when a pandemic or anything like COVID equivalent event strike, well, we get retrenched very easily. So mindset change. So a lot of people don't want to work in the airport or even the seaport, right? So, but however, there are more flights, more passengers and baggage, but manpower constraints and mindset changes will lead to increased likelihood and frequency in congestion and mishandling occurrences. I think these have been evident in European airports when we open, right? So because of the shortage of manpower, a lot of bags get short-shipped, okay? Now, how will you use data moving forward? Well, very important as more passengers come back, right, to the airport, to the seaport, and so on and so forth. Queue will become to build up, right? So we use data to actually monitor queue and also advanced analytics to trigger alerts of potential congestion, tailback, and very importantly, how to prescribe possible actions. A case in point is that before COVID, when it was in Changi, we actually monitor queues at immigration counters, right? So, for example, in Changi Terminal 1, there are 2 piers. So, during a peak period, when one pier is very congested, we actually use advanced arrival manifest load, right, to determine the queuing duration at the immigration. And when we predicted or projected that there's going to be congestion in one particular tier, right, the aim was actually to move the aircraft to the second tier. So there's some kind of a dynamic decision making here, so that aircraft can be relocated to another part of the terminal to use the less congested immigration counter, so that we can clear passengers faster. So that is basically one use of where we use the advanced data coming in and to do a prediction ahead of time. We also have sensors to monitor the current queuing situation. And together with this information, we trigger to either our agents on the ground or ICA folks so they can open up counters and so on and so forth, right? The other one that we use data a lot is on resource optimization through what we call collaboration decision making, right? Well, imagine last time when you were taking off during the peak period, Changi only have 2 runways, right? So at that point in time, you're waiting a taxiway for almost 1 hour. That is quite common, right? So what happened is that Changi started to use ACDM to now start to predict ahead of time what would be the usage of the runway B, right? So what happened is that during loading, the ground agent will basically predict what we call the target off-block time, and then the ATC will then determine what is the runway slot they can allocate to this particular flight, and then they will assign a TSAT to startup time. So this basically helps to optimize the runway, and you don't have to push back the aircraft and let the aircraft be on engine for a long time. So this helps to optimize your runway, help to minimize inconveniences to the passengers, and at the same time reduce fuel burn, right? So this is again use of data across the ecosystem to see how we can optimize resources. And then very important, today every airlines, every airport is telling you, use my app, you can track my bags and all the stuff, right? So later I have a use case to really go behind the scene to tell you how complex baggage handling is at the airport and how they use data, how we use data basically to help to manage the baggage tracking, baggage processing much easier. Okay, so harnessing data very shortly, moving forward for passenger aviation and maritime sectors. So as I say, there's a demand for travel. I think the demand for travel is increasing over time as more and more borders open. For example, in China, right, they will have visa-free entry for Singaporeans, right? And at the same time, right, the airlines are mounting more flights. So there'll be basically an outflux of passengers going to China, right, with this. Further, manpower constraints will remain a challenge for the industry, right? So we basically have to automate manual processes. In fact, at our ferry terminal, in the next 2 years, we are seeing how to automate, how to provide more self-service options so that we can reduce reliance on manpower. How can we have robots running around to provide wayfinding, to basically move bags between terminal and seaside. Okay? Digitalizing data, I think paperless, and very important is adopting hybrid human and non-human workforces so that human and the robots work together. Okay? Expectation for seamless and contactless travel because of COVID. Nowadays, when you go to the airport, you don't touch the screen. Basically, it is contactless. And SEA is pushing out contactless passport clearance, right? So you really don't have to bring forward or put forth your passport and boarding pass to scan, right? You just look at your face and there you can clear immigration. So that is basically what the aviation and maritime is going to. Evaluation of smart data-driven airports and terminals, right? So my vision in the Singapore Cruise Center in 2 to 3 years' time, we're going to build a digital twin. This digital twin is basically a digital replica of the physical world, helping to support operation and to augment decision making. So that's the purpose, right? And then at the same time, we also need to prepare for future pandemic. Okay. So all we talk about is digitalization, collection, collaboration, analytics, vigilance, automation. On collaboration is very key. Well, just now, my previous speaker was talking about people and culture. Here is not people and culture of my company, but rather the ecosystem, right? In the maritime passenger space, my ecosystem is basically the ferry terminal operator, the ferry operators, even ICA, the customs, all right, and MPA, the authority. In the airport space, it's even worse, more complex. So in order for us to be very successful in harnessing data, right, for all this, basically we have to involve and convince and get buy-in from the ecosystem partners. Okay, this is a very complicated case study I talk about, bag handling airport. So it's not so simple. From the time you check in to the time you receive the bag at your downline stream station, right? There are a lot of processes. And a few years ago, before COVID, IATA came back with a standard, right? IATA AH 753 that actually forces airlines, right, to provide a end-to-end tracking capability for your bags, right? So what happened is that, so this is, I don't want to go through it, this complex process is that we have a lot of baggage-related data flowing around, right? Imagine when you actually check in your bags, right? There are messages already flowing around, right, within the airport itself, right, within the airlines, within the ground handlers, and we use those information to help the process and make sure your bags get on board the flight to reach your destination. So there's a lot of baggage-related data around, and these are what we call EDIs, right, electronic exchange, and the format of the messages are actually very complex, right? Yeah, so it's not even XML. So such data actually provide visibility on the location of bags, right? So we can actually determine upon check-in where your bag is at any point in time, whether be it security screening, or sitting, or a racetrack, or even aboard the aircraft, right? Status of bags, right? Is this bag offloaded, these bags will be transferred, and so on and so forth. And service level timing, right? So you go to when next time you come back, right, at the Changi airport, you see the first bag, last bag, right? Basically, these are information that is provided by the ground handler to tell you that this is the first bag from the flight and the last bag from the flight. And we see the last bag from the flight means if you do not see your bags anywhere, that is actually lost in transit. Okay? And then, of course, mishandling, lost and found, right? So with better visibility, airports, ground handlers, airlines, ferry terminal operator can actually better manage your bags and able to present to you your status of the bags, where they are and stuff, and probably you may even know, right, when you reach Singapore, your bags actually is not on flight. Then instead of spending your time at the baggage claim, you just go straight to lost and found. Okay? So this is the classic case where you use data, and you know Singapore is very high chance of getting lightning, thunder, and all that stuff. So this is Cat 1 weather. When Cat 1 weather strike the airport, actually, the ground staff actually go into hiding, right? And then don't do anything, right? So as a result, sometimes you have a lot of bags, right? Mishandled bags going on to the next flight. So data analytics, data can actually be harnessed a point to help the ground handler, airport, and airlines to recover bags, right? So that you can basically ensure that less of the bags are handled in Singapore and more bags are loaded for the onboard journey. Okay. So this is basically some of the examples where you use data, descriptive analysis, predictive and prescriptive. For example, just now I talked about lightning strikes and all stuff, all activities down. So prescriptive, augmented data decision making. The question I ask is which flights and bags to be loaded in priority? Can we minimize passenger inconveniences? So that is a decision point that hopefully using data and using analytics and AI in the future, we can help to do that. Okay. So concluding, using data is good, but there are challenges, right? Some benefits, I think most of us know what are the benefits of using data, but the challenges is this, right? We encounter, as I say, it's a culture as the people change, right? So organization reluctant to share data, and when organization refuse to share data or very reluctant to share data, certain part of the jigsaw puzzle would miss it, and you cannot piece together to give you a very good decision into. Trustworthiness of data. Can I trust a piece of data, right? So as the data goes through its process, right? Some parts may be missing, some parts may not be right. So the question is, how do you trust the data, and how you design the process to make sure you trust the data, right? Misuse of data, right? Very important. So some of us surrender our personal data, details and all that stuff, and sometimes the data get misused, right? So these are the challenges as well. Timeliness of data. If the data is sent to me and received 1 day later, you know, it's not useful to me at all, right? Misunderstanding data, right? This is very common, especially you don't have a standard data semantics, data definition across the industry. Estimated time arrival or actual time arrival differs. The definition differs from one party to another. Is it touchdown? Is it on board or on chalk and so on and so forth? And lastly, noise, right? Too much irrelevant data. Well, all of us collect data for the sake of collecting data. So as a result, my database grow, right? So I can't make use of the data in a sense. I have to do a lot of cleaning up. So some of the challenges are this, and I believe there'll be more challenges, that you have experienced. Okay. So, well, this is basically a follow-up from my podcast. So I actually participate in a podcast. If you have not seen it, this is the URL link. So from there, you can have a better appreciation of the ferry operation industry. Okay, so with that, very short, a quick wrap-up. I'm available for questions outside. We can share experiences, right? Yeah, thank you very much.
Let's give him a big one.
Everybody find it fruitful so far and very exciting? Yeah? Is it very exciting?